Now you're into local versus regional versus systemic. One of my personal favorites, plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendonitis. Why do I put them together? Being mean? I don't like you guys. So I put those two together. Make you suffer. Well, it's one sheath. That's a big part of it. That's one sheath of tissue. But what else? The next time you see someone with plantar fasciitis and they're not a long distance runner, I want you to think of this as, or Achilles tendonitis. I'm not saying this is everything. I'm saying this is something. Think about it like this is an issue that's based on autoimmunity. Right? So don't think of like, I'm going to sit there and work on the foot for an hour. There's nothing wrong with that if it's a local problem. But if they're 55 years old, postmenopausal, don't drink water, most likely what you've got here is autoimmunity. So start looking at the whole system. Again, looks like a local problem, it's a whole system problem. Right? Look and talk to them about their hormonal system. Again, like hormones have a huge impact. Right? Look at them and think, okay, does a foot match the knee, match the pelvis, match the diaphragm, match the neck? Is there homogeneity present or is it heterogeneous? Is there a nervous system component? You have to understand that someone who has an anterior center of pressure, so they're always leaning forward like that, right? That person's going to have changes at the level of the Achilles and the foot. Now, here's a little trick question for you. Is it possible to have like an anterior center of pressure on only one side? Let's take a vote. Who votes yes? Okay, we got 2 votes. Who votes no? Hold a second. 2 voted yes. And how many abstentions? Many. Okay. So yes, you can have an ankle strategy on just one side of the body, right? Because if you think of an ankle strategy as being something that's mechanoreceptor, okay, that's one thing, right? Or ear or eye related. You can definitely have people who say have a amblyopia, and they might have a scoliosis, or they might have an anterior ankle an ankle strategy on just one side, the same side. Okay, so you should be thinking when you hear that, like, okay, yes, they have plantar fasciitis. What's going on systemically? Are the descending tracts that should be inhibited coming down from the cranium, from the central nervous system? Are they being inhibited? Just a few other things about autoimmunity. Has anyone heard the term vitamin D for autoimmunity? It's a big thing right now, right? Everyone's low vitamin D. You heard this? Everyone's low vitamin D. When they get, take vitamin D, it's for autoimmunity, blah, blah, blah. It's a really good idea, right? Or is it? Recently found an excellent article which referred to a term which I'm going to use periodically. And the term I use the term black box, where it's like, and this iPhone will present a good version of it. Here's my stimulus. Here's a response. What happens in here in the black box, we can only guess. We don't know for sure. Right? So this has been, I think it's Socrates who talked about this. Black box phenomena. Right? So science is like always trying to figure out what's in the black box by breaking it down and cutting it into pieces. Super idea. Doesn't always work. Vitamin D is a great example. In an article that was interesting and referred to this term black box immunity. Now what they're realizing with vitamin D is maybe a low vitamin D is not a precursor to autoimmunity. Maybe low vitamin D is a symptom of autoimmunity. Like we should be looking at, oh, this person has low vitamin D, is like this person's on the edge of autoimmunity, right on the edge. And what's going on is there's a physiological process that's chewing up and changing how vitamin D is processed. And so all of a sudden, boom, it dropped. This is totally different from what we've been taught the past 15, 20 years about vitamin D. So now they're saying when you see a person with really low vitamin D and they don't live in the Arctic, right? Instead of thinking, oh, give them vitamin D, don't give them vitamin D. Look for where the problem is. I think that's a really useful thing for us to look at and think about. Ultimately, when someone says something like autoimmunity, where are we looking? Gut tube. Can you test the gut tube? You learned it in the assessment course. And over again for the next 4 years, 5 years. Okay. Now, the classic osteopathic concept of discernment. When does discernment start? What am I referring to with discernment? I'm referring to the concept of being able to tell the difference, to discern between self and non-self, right? So, for example, right, when you're a baby swimming around your mama's belly, everything is self, right? I can only touch placenta, which is related to me. I swim in amnion, which I'm also pissing into, right? And everything else is going in and out of the amnion, and I'm drinking that stuff. Kind of like a fish. I'm like a fish for a little while. It's all self, right? And then what happens? Well, one day you get squeaked out and you're born. So what happens? You are in the process of recovery from being exposed to non-self. And you gradually learn there's me, and then there's the rest of the world. Now, although that sounds commonsensical, right? One of the things that happens is that there's this long-term learning process of self versus non-self. So when you see someone with excess allergies, autoimmunity, boundary issues, right? These are all examples of an inability to properly determine self from non-self. And that's one of the things we want to work on. This is very important. It's very important because we're going to learn about this more and more. But if you look at someone who has autoimmunity, don't think of diagnosis autoimmunity. Think gut for sure. Think nervous system for sure. Think, has this person an error somewhere in discerning self from non-self? And is that what's showing up in front of you? And this is how serious it is. You guys ever heard of Hashimoto's? I sure as hell hope so, right? Well, there's a trigger, right? Various different types of triggers that can cause Hashimoto's. What happens once you have the hyperthyroid phase of Hashimoto's? What's going on? Your immune system targets your own thyroid. You kill your own thyroid. That's a loss of ability to discern self from non-self. It's just an example.